Right, we're going to go ahead and get started. So hello, everybody. Welcome to our Friday session. Super excited about our presenter today, Kristi Beltkamp, doing Ditching the Diet Cycle. So Kristi, as a registered dietitian nutritionist, has been working with Corewell Health and has educated thousands of people in nutrition classes and one-on-one nutrition coaching for over 14 years. She teaches individuals on how to use food as medicine and enjoy eating. With a master's degree in nutrition from Northern Illinois University, Kristi also holds a certification as a health coach and sports dietitian, and she enjoys food and cooking with the focus on making dishes nutritious yet still delicious. So welcome, Kristi. Super excited to hear your presentation today.
All right, awesome. Thank you. I'm gonna get my screen going here. Okay, here we go. Awesome. So yeah, today is probably a different topic than many of you have heard of, but it's something that I definitely have a passion for, is helping people to get off of the diet cycle. I hear this a lot, over and over. I've tried this and then I kind of fell back into my habits. And so people get onto this yo-yo diet train and they're not understanding why and how to break the cycle. So that's what we're gonna talk about today. So we'll talk about the dieting dangers, which again can be a little bit thought-provoking. Oh, wait a minute, I thought we were supposed to be dieting. How are there dangers? So we'll look at that. We'll look at that diet, that yo-yo diet cycle, how that starts and kind of what perpetuates it, how we can stop that. And then we'll look at healthy weight perspective. So how do we look at being healthy and what a healthy weight is without focusing on these dieting approaches, these restrictive dieting approaches, and some practical tips and takeaways with how to eat more intuitively and not rely on these restrictive diet approaches. So first up is, again, why is dieting bad? It's that question like, wait a minute, I thought this was supposed to be something that we should be looking into, right? It's a matter of finding the right one. But I really also want to just talk about what dieting is first. Usually our first thought is maybe, like a certain program where you're counting points or calories, or maybe you're using different like food products and have this specific schedule, or maybe you're eliminating certain like food categories like no carbs or something like that, right? Or high protein. So there's a lot of different ways that are definitions of what dieting is, but really it's something that is it's got a very rigid type of eating pattern. It's very restrictive, and most of the time it's not something that you can really sustain for long periods of time, right? So it can fall under a lot of those categories. Even quote healthy lifestyles, some of those approaches are people like, I'm just going to eat totally clean, or I'm not going to eat any sugar, which sounds like more of a lifestyle that can have a lot of these effects from dieting as well. And so sometimes that can even fall into this category as well. So I want to define that a little bit first. But these are some of the dangers. One is weight cycling. So basically what this is, when we go on diets, right, well, we get really restrictive and then we see some weight loss. And then we get off track and we gain weight back. And usually it actually ends up being a little bit more than what we initially lost. But there's this up and down. We're on a diet, we're off a diet, this weight cycling that happens. And this actually is more dangerous than just staying the same weight. So it's an independent risk factor for cardiovascular disease, inflammation, high blood pressure, and insulin resistance. So again, just that up and down, that continuing like yo-yo is actually worse than just staying where you're at. Also, a couple stats too. Most people that do lose weight on a diet will gain it back within 2 to 5 years. Again, that varies just from person to person. And there's actually studies that showed repeat dieting is actually a predictor of weight gain. So the more you diet, they find the higher your weight tends to be over time. So we know it just doesn't work. Next risk factor is disordered eating. So I think a lot of us are familiar with, those more extreme forms of eating disorders with anorexia or bulimia binging, and some of these different more extremes. But there's a wide range of disordered eating that we're going to also look at in a moment too. That is a result of basically the diet culture that we live in. And I see this all the time in people that I work with. 8 of 10 women and 7 of 10 men in the US suffer from food guilt. It increases binging and cravings. I think we've all experienced that when we try to restrict something, we actually crave it more and end up overeating it. And we'll talk about that more as we go here. And it creates feelings of failure, low self-esteem, and social anxiety, right? You can't go out anywhere, you can't enjoy life. You're constantly thinking about food, and it really is not fun. It's no way to live. And a lot of these behaviors that we get stuck in, especially with guilt, I think most people feel is normal. Like, I should feel this way. This is how everybody feels. This is what everybody is always thinking about, but it's not. And those are actually signs of disordered eating. So we want to develop good relationships with food. And then thirdly, it can affect our metabolism. So again, that yo-yo, weight up, weight down, yo-yo dieting, where you're kind of really restricting and then kind of overeating, actually affects our metabolism. So our metabolism slows down because it keeps thinking that it's getting this starvation moments are coming in, and so it's preserving more to get ready for this next famine that's coming, right? And so our metabolism actually slows down, which makes it harder to lose weight in over time. Also, our satiety cues atrophy, meaning our fullness signals start fading away. And we start just feeling a bigger appetite. We start feeling more hungry and craving over time because we're ignoring our natural signals of when we're hungry and full. And also it alters our body composition in a negative way. Unfortunately, we start losing more muscle mass and building up more fat mass. So sometimes our weight might be the same, but our body composition can be altered as well. So this is the biggest statistic that I always point out to people. My question is, would you start a diet if you knew it would ultimately fail? This is probably 100% for most people, right? I don't know what the exact criteria was for this study, but I think most people that I meet with agree, oh yeah, I've failed all of the diets I've done. And the problem isn't that there's something wrong with you. The problem is that the diet itself doesn't work and it sets you up to fail. But that's what causes all of the guilt and the shame and this feeling of failure, like we just talked about, low self-esteem, all of these things, because we're not meant to follow them in the first place. There's nothing wrong with you. It's this dieting culture. So read through these bullets here and just take a moment and mentally check off how many of these you can relate with. Just read through some of these statements. Terrified about being overweight, avoid eating when hungry, preoccupied with food, thinking about calories or carbs, again, the guilt, a constant focus about weight, thinking about calories when you're exercising, avoiding sugar, trying to be really rigid with your eating, right? So think about these statements. All of these come from a questionnaire that assesses people's if they have basically disordered eating disorders. When I first looked at this list, I was in a bit of a shock because I realized, wow, this is like 90% of the people that come to me trying to lose weight. um, and this comes from it's called the Eat 26 questionnaire. This is just 16 of the 26 questions that it asks. I kind of like took off the ones that are obvious, like where with more that anorexia, right, or binging that people associate more with eating disorders. But all of these thoughts are signs of disordered eating. These are not normal thoughts. It might be common because of the diet culture that we live in, but they are not normal. And so we really want to, if you're struggling with these, start to think about, okay, where does this come from, and how can I start thinking about food and my health and my weight in a different way that is a lot healthier. So I want to talk about the dieting cycle here. And this is just the progression of like what happens when we get caught in it. So it starts with a desire to lose weight. We find a diet. And usually at the beginning also, we get really excited, right? We're very motivated at the beginning of a diet. All we're thinking about is what we're going to get to, right? I'm going to have this perfect body. I'm going to be ripped or whatever it is. We all have kind of these different ideas of what we're working for. And so we get all excited, we get things going. The first couple of weeks are awesome. And eventually we get to this point of cravings and reduced self-control, right? Because we cannot sustain these behaviors long term. We take on a lot at once and we lose it, right? You're at a party, you've told yourself you're not going to have a cookie, you're not going to have any sweets. And finally you give in because this voice is just constantly nagging at you. Just one cookie, like you don't get to this point too often. You could work it off tomorrow. You can eat less tomorrow. All these different excuses start piling up until eventually you eat a cookie. And then the voices keep going, ugh, you just blew it. You're a failure. You might as well just give up and enjoy the night and go crazy with the rest of the food. And then we end up losing control and overeating. And then we get stuck into this cycle. What's the point? I keep failing. This isn't going to work. And then we get way off track, regain the weight, and we sit in that for a little bit until we finally can't take it anymore. We go to the doctor's office. Somebody makes a comment. I need to lose weight. We find another diet, and the cycle keeps going, right? So the thing we need to change, right, is the vehicle, dieting. And I would also say even the desire to lose weight, we need to have the right perspective on as well, because sometimes we have a wrong idea of what healthy weight is, again, according to culture. So we need to make sure we have a good perspective there as well as making sure fear is not a motivator. Fear is a terrible motivator. There's research on that. The doctor can say, you need to lose weight or else, and it really doesn't help propel people forward in a good way and in a sustainable way. It needs to be something that hits your deep why, right? Why do you want to lose weight? Why do you want to be healthy? And it needs to be something that really you feel passionate about, not someone else is telling you to be. So let's talk about healthy weight, because this is also one of those motivators that get people in that cycle. We have to also have a good idea of what a healthy weight is. We use the BMI in the medical world because it's easy and it's cheap. It doesn't require equipment. We just do a calculation. There is the scale, but we all know it's flawed, right? It is not accurate for every person. And so you have to take that with a big grain of salt, and not put too much weight on that BMI number. It doesn't account for your gender, your ethnicity, your age, muscle mass, body frame, all of those things are going to make a huge difference in what a healthy weight is for you. And so this needs to be something that it requires a lot of different perspective shifts, and even talking with different people, and just knowing yourself what feels right for you. Because if you try to get to a weight that's not healthy for your body, it's going to revolt, right? It's going to start shutting down. You're not going to be healthy, and some people just can't get there, right? And so they keep trying harder and harder and harder and going deeper into this diet world, um, and really getting into a low stuck place in that cycle. So we have to have a healthy perspective. Our overall health is not tied to a number. Skinny does not equal healthy. Um, we all know that. We all know somebody who can eat anything and not gain weight, but that doesn't mean they're healthy, right? And so we have to look at the bigger picture, kind of step back and go, what affects our health? Weight is on there, but there's so many other pieces that affect your health. This study listed here showed that if you ate 5 servings of fruits and veggies a day, you exercised 12 times a month, you avoided smoking, and you drank alcohol in moderation, that was the biggest factor to reducing mortality, regardless of what people's weight was, right? Weight didn't even make a difference. It was these lifestyle pieces. So we can't make that the biggest focus of why we're making these changes. And if we take that out of the picture or make it a smaller part of the picture, it actually releases a lot of pressure off of us. We can have a healthier relationship with food. We can enjoy life a little bit more. It doesn't have to be perfect, right? We put a lot on ourselves. So keep that in mind, right? There's a lot of pieces. Also, under the weight piece, there's a lot of pieces under what our metabolism does and what our natural weight comes to. Our genetics, of course, is going to influence, and that kind of goes to the BMI of what I just talked about, all those factors. Sleep and stress are huge when it comes to our overall health and metabolism. I've seen people that are eating well, but don't see changes in weight because the sleep and stress is way off, or their digestion is way off, right? They've got a lot of issues with bloating or IBS or things like that are way out of whack. Those can affect our metabolism and overall health. And we want to make sure we're addressing all of these pieces. And again, not putting so much pressure on ourselves to just focus on the number. Of course, movement is part of it too. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Hormones. Some people have different health conditions that affect their hormones. Even going through menopause can throw in some challenges for women. Medications. I've seen a lot of people that, that's could be side effects of some medications where your appetite might be affected. People see weight gain, and that's nothing that you've done anything wrong, right? You don't have to feel any more pressure about that, but we just need to know that there's a lot more to it than just a number on the scale, and that we need to get to this certain number or else, right? So, of course, the culture is another demon in this fight. I wish I could put diet culture and body image culture into a punching bag and let us all go to town. It just makes me so upset because we have these ideals that are just not even real. But that's like our picture that we have in our brain. We see it, we're inundated with it. It's constant. I saw a quote by Teddy Roosevelt that said, "Comparison is a thief of joy," right? We will never stop this cycle if we're constantly chasing something that we'll never be able to have. So make sure your goals are realistic. And this, I literally was trying to find a picture of a before and after, maybe like an advertisement or model or something, because we know darn well that they are altering these photos, right? They're digitally altering pictures that we see, and it's not real life. And I came across this app that just showed up, and it's like this AI tool where you can upload a photo of yourself, and it just changes it to whatever you want it to be. And I thought this was hilarious, in a very negative way, right? This is crazy. And this is what we see, what's on the right. And we think that that is what we're supposed to look like. Some people can never get there as hard as you try. And so we really need to have the right perspective. I found a couple stats too that are very interesting. Cellulite, right? We think we need to get rid of cellulite. 80% of the population have it. It is normal. There's no way to get rid of it. Our fat cells are actually square shaped, cube shaped. And so it's not going to be round and smooth unless you have zero fat, which also won't be round and smooth. We have it 80%, right? And the people that don't, it's going to be more of a genetic thing. So my question is, right, what has pursuing this unrealistic ideals brought you? We want to make sure that we have the right perspective. So usually after I present this, people's main question is, oh, so if I'm not dieting, what are you saying? Like, does that mean that I can just eat whatever I want? I'm just going to eat junk food all day. If I'm not dieting, it means I'm just going to let myself go, or I'm giving up on myself. I'm just going to keep gaining weight forever and ever and ever. And I can't think about health and nutrition. I'm just going to eat whatever I want. Right? These are the arguments against giving up dieting. There's actually a whole movement, I guess you can say, non-diet eating. I mean, you could find it on social media, which actually is really much better things to follow on social media than some of these dieting ones. And another one called Health at Every Size. And these are the arguments against it. Well, you're just going to eat garbage you're promoting eating garbage all day. You're promoting, weight gain and having, overweight. That is not what I'm saying. We just looked at how dieting actually causes weight gain, right? And is very detrimental to our health. That's not what I'm saying. But there is a healthy way to go about it, where you can have a good relationship with food. You can be healthier, feel good about your body, and find that healthy balance for you. So we don't need to get stuck in these lies. But here, this is my practical takeaways that I want you all to start practicing. So if these things resonate with you, these are my steps. So step 1 is to get rid of the scale. I know some people, it's something they do every day. They weigh themselves in the morning, and it's what determines if they're having a good day or a bad day. And the scale shouldn't be telling you that. There's so many things that influence our weight every day. And so you don't want that to be the factor that tells you if you're doing good or not. So, I mean, I encourage people to throw it in the trash, right? Or at least put it away, or at least weigh yourself less often, unless you have a medical reason where you need to weigh yourself more frequently, like just heart failure or something like that. If you medically need to be weighing yourself and your doctor needs to be checking in, that is different. But for most of us, the scale is not friendly. So try to just take that out of the equation. It really releases you from, again, that pressure. And you can give yourself credit a lot more often through the day. Just be like, hey, I made really good choices today. And you don't have to have the scale tell you if you did or not, because I've seen a lot of people where they're like, man, I had a really good week. I was eating really good, and I was not craving as much and avoiding some of the treats when I was at work, and I was feeling good and confident. And then I stepped in the scale and I went up 2 pounds. And so then what happened? They totally gave up on all of their goals and was like, what's the point? I'm trying, and the scale didn't go down. I'm not going to go to the gym. I'm just going to give up. And so we don't want the scale to tell us if we're doing good or bad, right? Just because it didn't go down doesn't mean everything that you just did doesn't benefit you, right? And you're not working on creating those healthy habits. So consider that. Um, I'm going to kind of work my way down and around. I'm going to do hunger and fullness last. Okay. So focus on movement, not calorie burn. So exercise. Typically, they go hand in hand with dieting, right? You're dieting and exercising. You're going to get on a diet. There's usually a plan that you got to get to the gym. And the only time we go to the gym is when we're dieting. And so we have this negative, first of all, this negative kind of association with exercise because I need to burn a certain amount of calories, or I need to do it so many times a day, or if I'm not profusely sweating or out of breath, it doesn't count. I used to think that a lot because I did sports. And so I always had this intense approach to exercise. And we really need to take the weight of just calorie burning completely out of the picture. The benefits to exercise doesn't actually directly affect weight loss as we think. So when you think of your total amount of calories you're burning in a day, 60 to 70% of them is our BMR. That's our basal metabolic rate, what we burn every day if we just sat. And it's our breathing and our heart pumping and our brain working, right? That's a majority. Don't have to do anything about that. It's just happening when we sit here. Then another like 20 to 30% is what's called NEAT. So NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. And these are just little things that we do through the day, running errands, cleaning the house, shoveling the driveway, etc. And so that actually makes up a pretty good chunk of what we burn from our activity. So sometimes just adding more of those things in the day can make a bigger impact than, sitting on a treadmill and trying to burn 300 calories a day. So adding more of those neat things, parking further away, taking the stairs, like all of those add up really well. And then there's another chunk. It's called the thermic effect of food. This one I love so much. It's basically the calories you burn from eating, right? 10% of the calories you burn are just digesting and processing our food. So you get rewarded for eating, right? I love that one. And then depending on how much you exercise, right? That's the last piece, which could be 10%, 20%, 30 if you're there for a long time, frequently through the week. But again, that's not the main chunk. When you think of if you think of a pie chart and all these different percentages, that's a pretty small chunk of what you're burning in the day. So most people, a couple hundred calories that you burn going to the gym for 30 to 60 minutes. If you think of calories, that's one cookie, right? And it's really deflating. I ate a cookie and just undid everything. What you want to think about is, what does exercise do for me right now outside of calorie burning? It's going to help with my mood, my bone health, stress management, brain health. It helps you sleep better. It gives you more energy. And sometimes it could be social, right? You go out for walks with people, go to classes. It helps all of those things. And of course, it's going to affect chronic diseases. It's going to preserve your muscle mass and your bone health. It helps balance your hormones, reduce insulin resistance. There's so many benefits that we can get out of. And to me, that's a lot more motivating to go to the gym and think about that list versus how many calories I need to burn. And I go because it does literally make me feel better. I'm stressed and I come out just feeling so much more clear and calm and focused. And again, a lot of it, in the summertime, I do more biking. And so that's a social thing too. And so for me, it's a mental health thing that helps, and also just prevention of back pain, things like that, right? We want to take care of our bodies, and that's what it does. And we don't have to be focused so much on the calorie piece. The next one is avoiding extremes and banishing. And again, this goes back to just dieting in general, but a lot of it is a mindset. So these kind of go together: thoughts, Focus on thoughts, not actions. A lot of the work I do with people that are stuck in this dieting cycle is think about what you're thinking about. Everything we do comes from a thought and a belief. Um, and so we really need to kind of back it up, and it's subconscious thought, right? We're not sitting there actively going, ooh, I ate a cookie and I failed. I'm gonna go eat a whole nother pan. And like we don't sit there and think about that, but that's just what like happens. We just do it. There's this urge, right? That just comes upon us. Um, but we have to just pause and think a little bit. Okay, what was just going through my head? What was that thought? Sometimes it's things we learned from growing up, right? You had to clean your plate, otherwise you never leave the table, right? So there's a subconscious thing in the back of your head. Even though I'm full and I know I shouldn't, I feel like I need to finish my plate. So it could be as simple as that. Sometimes we don't want to waste food. Um, so just those little things, we need to start catching them, deciding if they are a true, helpful thought and belief, and switching it if it's not, right? Start relearning and retraining your brain on how to respond to these things. It takes time, but this is where you're going to find long-term success. It's all about your mindset. But actually having these banishing of foods, that's what the number one reason why people crave and binge and overeat is because they're banishing things. Number one reason. Maybe besides, like next best would be stress eating and emotional eating. But most of the time it's because we have told ourselves we can't. And so our brain wants it more, right? It's like a 5-year-old that you told, you can have all these toys, but not this one. And the one that they want, the one you said no to, we respond the same way. And so when we banish something, it actually increases our cravings for it. And so I actually recommend, have a treat, like a planned treat. I have one every day. And it actually helps me to not go crazy when I am around things. Most people will say, I can't have any sugar in my house, or I'm just going to like eat it all. And then they clean it out and try to stay away from it. Because when they are around it, I binge, right? It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, because when you tell yourself you can't stop when you see it, you're not going to stop when you see it, going back to the thoughts. So see how this like cycle can just keep continuing? But by just saying it's okay, I can have a treat, then you feel you're not guilty after eating one, and you don't need to eat the rest. I've had a lot of testimonies, right, from people that I've worked with, like where we actually set a goal to have a treat every day, and we decided what it was going to be. And they came back and said, you know what? There were several days where I didn't even want it because I knew I could have it. I wasn't craving it. And I realized, it's not even really what I want. It's no big deal. I chose something else, or I thought, I'm not even that hungry. I don't want it. And so um, it really is a mindset shift, and working with how our brains work, right? So avoid banishing, and see if you're finding yourself with overeating moments, see if that's something that may be underlying behind there. So thoughts and actions. Sometimes journaling can be really helpful with this, where you can just write things down as you're going through the day or reflecting back. Man, I overate today. What was going on? Was I stressed? Did I not get enough sleep? Right? Did I skip a meal and I didn't eat enough? Which kind of leads me to my next point here. Eat balanced and regularly. So is another thing I see frequently, especially when it comes to overeating and binging, is we skip meals. Okay. um, Most common phrase. I do really well during the day. And then when I get home, I just can't control myself. I eat big dinner, I'm ravenous, and then I just eat snacks all night. Most common thing I hear. And also the most common thing is they don't eat breakfast. They're chugging coffee. Coffee is not breakfast. on their way out the door, or a protein shake, or they're not eating anything. And maybe they're having a snack, or maybe they're getting a few bites in for lunch. And they're like, I feel fine through the day. I'm not craving, I'm not thinking about food. And then I get home and I'm this crazy person. So first of all, your body's starving by the time you get home if you haven't eaten much, and it's your primal hunger kicking in. Your hunger hormones skyrocket late in the afternoon if you don't get enough earlier in the day, and they stay up all night regardless of how much you eat. So your body, it's your body going, I'm not getting enough food. I need to save up for the next starvation phase that's going to happen tomorrow morning. So we need to reassure our bodies that we're getting fuel, have something in the morning, balance out through the day. Doesn't have to be massive, gourmet breakfast, but get some substantial food in. The reason that we don't think about it or feel hungry earlier in the day is because most of the time we're focused on work, right? You're going to work, you're doing your thing, it's busy, there's stress, you're running errands, you're picking up kids, you're going to games and sporting events and practices. If our bodies don't multitask well. So if your brain is focused on this other task, it will ignore your hunger signals, get kind of pushed to the back burner until you take a break, which usually happens after dinner, and we finally exhale, right? And then all of a sudden, or not after dinner, when we get home, right? When you're kind of shutting off some of the to-do list, and finally you pay attention. So our brains are terrible multitaskers. Try to be intentional about making sure you're eating and taking breaks to eat, and checking in to listen to your body through the day so that you can catch that. Also, make sure that when you're eating and you're slowing down. Most of us, and I am guilty, I will confess, we eat at our computers. I'm guilty of eating in the car when I'm running to breakfast. We're eating while we're cooking dinner, right? Because we're so hungry and we're just eating, and then our meal is done. Even though we just ate basically a whole meal's worth, we sit down and eat another meal. And we eat really fast because maybe our break is short, or again, we just got a lot on our plate, and so I'm just going to work through lunch. So we eat really fast. If we eat fast, it's also hard to be mindful and aware of when we're full, when to stop. You need to slow down. It does take time for your brain to tell, or your stomach to tell your brain, we're full, stop, slow down, chew. This also helps with digestion. A lot of people with digestive issues because they're eating too fast and not chewing well. So slow down, be mindful, chew your food. These are probably things you've heard 1,000 times, but we need to start practicing this. All right, and then the last piece is honor your hunger and fullness. So you can actually Google hunger scale. This is used a lot in mindful eating. And if nothing else today, if this is the only thing you walk away with, this is the golden nugget. I want everybody to be using this. This is your internal portion controller. How do I know how much to eat? Well, stop when you're full. That's how our bodies were made. That's what we're built with. We have hormones that tell us when we're hungry. Our brain is like, oh, I need fuel. Hunger hormones kick in. And then when we get what we need, our stomach starts expanding, trigger back to the brain, you're good, you can stop. So if we can really tune into this, we don't need to worry about counting or measuring. We can really just focus on listening to our body, and it requires slowing down, right? So this one's a scale 1 through 10. 10 is ravenous, 1 is ravenous, 10 is overstuffed, 5 is neutral. So I usually tell people eat at a 3 or 4, stop at a 6, 7, kind of in that range. But you want to avoid the red zones, right? You don't want to be ravenous because we know that leads to overeating. Like I mentioned, your body kind of kicks in to compensate. And we crave sugar and processed food because that's quick energy that our brain wants. It's not because you don't have any willpower anymore. And obviously 9 and 10 is we just ate more than we need, right? So this takes practice, but this is the absolute best tool that you can use moving forward. And so find some info on that and really start learning it. It'll help you tune into a lot of these areas. So I'm going to leave you with this thought. Healthy eating is having a healthy balance of foods and a healthy relationship with food. Okay. You usually can't have one without the other. And keep in mind what healthy eating is something that's sustainable, right? It's something that you know you can do long term. It's giving you the nourishment you need, but it's not overly restrictive. That's my definition of a healthy eating pattern. So keep that in mind as you're making your health goals moving forward.
Thank you so much, Kristi. That was amazing.
Awesome. Yeah. And we got some questions.
Yes, we have lots of questions. So I'll go through a few of them. I know we have a couple minutes left. So the first question came in from Sarah. How much weight loss variance creates problems? Are we talking 5 pounds and up, or is there a specific number at which it becomes a concern?
Oh, I'm assuming this is meaning just like day to day kind of ups
Yes.
and downs that we see. Um, I think that's going to just depend on each person, just because we have different body sizes, and some people have maybe more fluid retention concerns, and so those people might see a little bit more up and down. And so, yeah, it's hard to say like give a definitive answer. I would talk to your doctor more specifically on that one, just because everyone's going to be a little different with what that can be healthy, up and down for.
Great answer. Another one is, what are your thoughts on intermittent fasting?
I knew this question was coming. So you're going to hear a different answer from different people on this one. Personally, as a dietitian that's worked with a lot of people, I do not recommend it for probably 95% of the people that I work with, because most people need to work on just getting their body in that balance, right? Being consistent, developing a healthy relationship with food, getting a good mindset around their bodies. And that takes time and work. And there's a very small percentage of people that can do intermittent fasting without getting pulled into that dieting cycle again. If you have a very good body image, a very good relationship with food, food is fuel, there's no emotional connection to it, then there's room for that, I feel like. But majority of people aren't there from what I see. And so it can kind of walk a fine line with that disordered eating. And so it's very individual. And so, like I said, for me, most of the time I encourage people to um, really focus on balance. Typically a 12-hour fasting cycle like works best for most people, because it's, like say 7 to 7 or 8 to 8. And that's kind of a typical eating window for most people. And that's more manageable and works more with how our body is built. But yeah, it's something where you want to be careful. There's a fine line. And I would encourage most people to develop that balance first and then explore that possibility.
All right, we probably have time for one more question. So somebody asked, how can I handle social situations or events where food is abundant, but I'm trying to listen to my own body's cues?
Mm-hmm. Good question. And it is really hard. Social situations are probably the most challenging, because there's food there that you're not used to. Everyone around you is eating. I know for me, I always struggled with a little like just social anxiety. And so like food would just be kind of my comfort, like my thing to do, because I didn't know what to do or who to talk to, so there's a lot going on. And so what I encourage is kind of think about what are some of the maybe thoughts that come up when you're there that pull you off track, right? It could be, for example, like, well, everybody else is eating, I should eat, or I never get around these foods, so I should treat myself. Like just some of those thoughts, kind of do an inventory of what are some of the common thoughts that kind of get me off track, and think of a response of what you could tell yourself. I always say like what your rational self would tell your irrational self in that moment. And you're almost like visualizing that situation and creating a response to that before you get there so that you know what to say, you know what to do. And it's going to take practice. The more you do it, the easier it will get. And it just takes those little decisions of saying yes or no, to certain things to honor yourself. That's going to build that and make it easier over time. But also just think of like other strategies. Maybe just some people will eat before going and then not have to worry about food when they're there, or they'll take a dish there that they know they're comfortable with, so they know they're getting balance in. So really, you just want to strategize both with your environment and with your mental kind of those thoughts before getting there, and that can kind of help you leave feeling better. I always say like, what is it going to take for you to walk away feeling good versus walk away feeling regret? So just thinking ahead and visualizing can be really helpful.
Well, thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. And I know everybody, I'm sure from the questions, really enjoyed the conversation. There were a lot of people saying thank you in the chat. So wonderful job. And if anybody has any other questions for Kristi or for anybody in the Plant Power Challenge, you can ask them on our Facebook page too. So
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Awesome. Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for joining, everyone.